Welcome to Maker's Perspective. We're going to be making a switch axis whiskey cup, seen here. I'm working at Acme Studio in Louisville, Kentucky with the assistance of J.W. May. I've already made my supio, so right now I'm gathering to make my collar. J.W. just picked up the supio with a little donut punty.
Come to that, Marver.
I push all the material back from my collar, and then I blow through it. Now the bubble hasn't popped yet, as I don't want to spread that cellophane throughout the studio. Here's my collar, the cup, and JW's punny, just for reference. I take it into the glory hole and I blow it all the way through, therefore not getting any mess in the studio. I have a little bit of excess glass on the end, but that's okay. I can just simply push it back into the collar. Sometimes flow pipes get a little bit of schmutz or glass in there, so that's what I'm looking at. All looks good enough. JW brings over the supio, and I'll attach it to the collar, grabbing my tweezers and then switching to my straight shears. Placing them right on the connection, JW taps the punty and it breaks right off where I stop the vibration at the connection point. Now it's just heating up the supio and setting it up so I can gather on it. Go over to the marver, make sure the sides are nice and even. Give it a look and make sure it still has a hole through both the collar, which I put pressure on and could have squeezed down, but also the bottom of the piece is still open. One more trip to the marver, quick glance at the piece, and now I'm heating it up and I'll go back to the bench to attend to the bottom. At the bench, I grab my tweezers and just tweeze out the very end.
Not bad.
Take my jacks, open it up a little bit, and then start squeezing down to get that little flower.
Stop.
And nip it off with a shear. Finally back to the heat. When I did that move, I went on the inside before going on the outside. Basically that cools the inside and also adds a little bit of rigidity to it as you close it down. At the bench, jacks on the
Cap.
sides, straighten up the moil, and then the butt ends on the bottom with a little bit of air. Basically, I just want to make sure that the bubble is nice and even so I can gather on it.
Good, stop.
Just getting my block already, and now taking it to the heat to burn off anything that can make bubbles. Here's a diagram of basically the steps of making a switched axis piece. The diagram will pop up again during different parts of the process. The basic version that I do is fairly similar to how I learned from Lino. I do something slightly different, and I'll explain that when it happens. Just letting it cool while JW rakes. And here again is my diagram for gathering. Go on the right, scoop down, shift a little to the left area, and then trail. So there I am going in, kind of scoop, going to the side just a little bit. And I have my nice even gather. And I go to cool the pipe, and then I'll block it back at the bench. Just evening it out everything. The glass and making sure that the heat
Hey, give it a heat.
hand it off to JW to give a heat. And I'm just tidying up the bench, making sure my pad's ready, getting the block. So quick pass in the block. I hold it up, cap it, give it a puff, and send that bubble to the bottom of the piece. I'll twist this, then I'll start the switch axis process. Here again is the process. I'm going to twist it up, so taking that gather, smooth it out, a lot of the material on the side, which is very similar to the setup as if I was going to stuff it into an optic mold. So paper in the sides. So not only would this be the type of setup for an optic mold, but if I was pulling a tube, or say like making a chandelier arm or something of that nature. So now I'm going to do kind of B, twist it up, and then after that heat, I'll start doing the jack lines that I have in B, so I can get to that little ball with a neck. So twisting it up,
Blow.
grabbing into that solid material, and having JW blow just a little bit.
Blow.
Now I'm starting to bite into where the bubble is, so it's nice and even, and I have a good twist. So Now I'll be doing this, where I put the jack line in at the back to make the bottom nice, and then start the jack line on the top part of the piece, and then the third was there because I pull it out like a little necked vessel. Making that ball neck is different than lino. So I'm starting to bite into the bubble so it's nice and even.
Stop.
And now I'm going and starting my jack line. Having JW blow and finish out.
Blow.
And now you can see I'm starting to pull out that jack line. So as if I was making a little necked vessel. Having JW blow at the same time, so I'm basically making a little necked sphere.
Blow. Stop.
Just trimming it off and refining that neckline. Now that's something Lino never did. Something I do when I make a sphere, from if I'm making a small sphere to if I'm making a larger, say 16-inch sphere. But it helps me so I'm not tweezing out or worry about the break off cracking into the bubble. So if I break off some of the neck accidentally, who cares? But if for some reason when you break it off the jack line and that crack goes up into the bubble, that sucks. You got to trim all the way back there. But this way, it doesn't really matter. I can flip it around and just cut off the neck. So here I am on C, where basically I'm just have that little neck ball. The red mark is where I'll put a sculpture punny on it. So just making sure that it's a nice even sphere,
Alright, will you take the other camera out?
as I want to have a nice termination point at that opposite end. So just doing a quick camera switch. And a quick flash of the little piece that I'll switch while JW goes and grabs the punty. Here's a diagram for the punty side. Basically, I'll put a sculpture punty on it, and then I'll just cut off that neck, then torch and pop a hole 90 degrees from where the original hole is, and that's where I'll put a new collar on, and then the axis will be switched. One quick flash. So he's coming over with a fairly fresh punty. He hasn't touched the bottom of it in any way, shape, or form. And that way there's going to be no schmutz. It'll go on nice and clean. And then when I peel it off, it'll peel off nicely. So I get it as centered as possible. Just give it a little pull. And then you can either use the jacks, diamond shears, or straight shears to put a little neck or constriction in it. Then chew down with the straight shears on the neck and bonk it off. When I say the neck, I meant the jack line. So the neck is still attached to the sphere. Again, putting on that neck is a little different than a lot of people do their switch axis. If it broke all funky and it was a sphere, I'd kind of be screwed up. Same thing. So here we are on D. Basically, I just need to heat up that area and cut off that neck. Again, if I'm making a sphere for myself, no switched axis, just a sphered shape, this is generally what I do. I also do it on flattened shapes too. I'll put a little neck and then we'll bonk it off once it's safely on the punty. That way I can really refine and make sure I have the right aperture for my opening of the vessel. But here, I'm just going to snip that off. So since I don't need the whole thing hot, I use the oxypropane just to kind of give a little bit of heat to the specific area that I want to cut. So I got my diamond shears, and I just gradually constrict and start squeezing until I cut it fully down, making sure that I don't have any material that flaked off onto the piece funny, and then giving a little bit of torch and a heat so I can round it out and make it a nice sphere.
I think part of the problem is where people get to steal from. So like, we've had problems like talking to the...
Now that process would work whether I was gathering over this little ball. So if I'm making a 12 or 14 block, pick up cane, twist it, put a little neck, put a sculpture punny, cut off that little neck, and put it on a collar and switch the axis that way. Or, in this case, all the steps would more or less be the same. Now I'm just rounding it out, making it a nice sphere. I put a little dent in it. That dent is just so I know where to torch. There's going to be a hole there, so it doesn't really matter that mark. Just torching, getting my tweezers a little warm. JW's got the Oxy Pro. There's kind of the diagram. That area I'm torching and I need to poke a hole in. So when I poke a hole, I go down with my tweezers, close, and then I pull out, opening them up. And when I do that, by opening them up, I'm spreading the material. And then I change the orientation of where I just poked and pulled out of.
Torch?
And then so when I lift up, I'm basically thinning out the glass there.
Look.
Still keeping it warm. And you can see that the material is thinning out quite a bit. Now, one thing that's important is to keep this whole thing warm, but specifically that little spot that you're tweezing through. One thing you don't want to happen is if it gets too thin like cellophane and then you poke into it, and the next thing you know, because of gravity, that little thin glass is just gone to the bottom of your bubble, and at that point you're kind of screwed. So I generally keep the whole bubble a little warm, and then that specific spot, torch it even hotter, and you can see right there, just pop through it. So by doing that, that ensures that there's no cellophane, and then I can just take my tweezers in there and then just round it out, making it into a nice aperture that'll accept the collar.
Alright, I'm good. Take this, I'll make a collar. Give it a good...
So in this diagram, we see F and G basically breaking off the punty onto the collar, and then if you slightly rotate it, you'll get to see the switch axis sphincter. I'm headed over to grab a blowpipe and make another collar. I'm basically making the same size collar that I used for the supio. This piece isn't going to get any bigger. I'm not gathering on it. If I was gathering over the switch, we could put it on a slightly bigger blowpipe or the same size pipe with a bigger collar. Just put a bubble all the way through. It's just like cellophane up there, but again, instead of blowing it out in the shop and making more of a mess, it's better to blow it out either in the furnace or the glory hole.
Been off for about 4 or 5 weeks in a row. Wow. And we trade texts occasionally. And the last thing I got from her was she had fallen. It sounded like in her house and spent the night on the floor. Oh, wow. Like, yeah. So, you know, shit happens. Well, but,
Bro, you get that big hot?
I mean, it's okay.
Just reaming out and shaping the collar, making sure that I expose a little bit of the head of the pipe. Again, I tried to keep the collar a little cooler.
Dogs didn't poop in the car.
I'll attach it once he comes straight over.
That counts.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Straight
now
up.
I have the bubble, let it glass sag, and attach. Go right around with the straight shears on the connection point, a quick tap, and a flash.
Things here.
You're going all right. All right.
JW brings it back, and now I'll just heat up that nub, the excess area of the sculpture punty. I'll just torch right on it. It'll get hot, and then I can almost just peel it up and off without disturbing the pattern underneath. Just going around, making sure it gets to be nice and hot. Giving it a little pinch, and then a pinch from the other direction, with a little bit of pull. And then just using my straight shears. Again, making sure I don't disturb the pattern underneath. Now you can just heat it up and melt it in. So from here on out, it's basically making a whiskey glass. There will be a little bit of a struggle as far as thickness is greater on the sides right now, because this thickness that used to be the bottom, as well as the top, well, that's currently the thickest piece is on the sides, and I need to transfer that thickness to the bottom. So it needs to be heated up and manipulated, which we're starting to do now.
All right.
I'll start papering it to help transfer the thickness, but also I can help push the rest of the bubble cleanly on to the collar. Of note, one thing with a lot of the switched axis and Pilchuck 96 and Calmo cups that I've done for myself, but then also, especially doing for Lino, we always put 1 to 2 healthy gathers on it. When you do that, you have the time to really set up the bubble better, get the thickness right, and then you can kind of make whatever you need to. This is all the glass I'm having on here, so I'm going to have to prep it just right. So I go to the marver, trying to straighten it out. Essentially, you got to think it's thicker on the sides, or thinner also in spots, and it's going to want to heat up and pull out differently. So I need to kind of push the glass around to where I need it, even it out so I can execute a small cylinder. This will just take a little bit of extra time.
We're at about 22, 23.
Yeah, it's about almost 10. Go to about 25 to try that.
Okay.
What if I hear a beep?
Marvering the sides, and gradually coming up to place more emphasis on the bottom of the piece. You can kind of see right there where the thicknesses are on the side. It also has that thin spot on the sides. The thin spot is basically opposite of the old bottom and the old top, or in between, however you want to look at it. Now, if I would have wanted gathered on it, I could do so and then make this little egg shape with a sluggy on top like I did. Single supio, switched axis, then gathered on and made. Now here is some of Lino's switched axis, one of his angel tiers. Essentially, on the right side, you can see the termination point, and on the left side, you can basically see through the piece to the termination point. Back at the bench, smoothing it out, and you can see now I'm bringing that thickness to the bottom of the piece. I have that nice reservoir of clear down towards the tip.
Stop. What's the timing at?
25 on the dot.
Okay, you can grab it.
So coming over and one more marver on the sides, and then again I'll gradually come up, spending that time on the tip or bottom to push the glass down there, but then also take that glass and cool it so it'll be a little bit thicker in that area. Just another brief camera switch. And I'll heat it, focus in on the bottom just a little bit more. Just making sure the thickness is nice there. A little back and forth. No reason to go on the sides, just the very bottom of the piece. Now there's the cup we'll be making. You can see the switch axis on the right, and on the left, just what it's like to look in the bottom, since there's no termination point in the bottom.
Blow.
At the bench, butt into the jacks on the bottom, and a little bit on the moil. As I have JW blow, you can see it kind of blows out a little funky. But I'll still put in a jack line. Again, I'm making sure I'm in that supio, so a little bit extra off the pipe. There's a good shot of blowing it out. You can see I have that nice kind of tip to punny to, that'll be good. And again, the thicknesses are kind of a little askew, but that happens. It's definitely thinner on spots that were not the old bottom or old top of the piece. Where those axes are is where the thickness is. So essentially where the blowpipe was, or the bottom of the piece, when I originally stuck up the supio and gathered on it, those 2 points are the thickest spots. A quick little swing down. and then jacks on the sides,
Blow.
and just kind of forcing it into that cylinder shape that we're going for.
Blow.
You can also see that the little tiny tip on the bottom just got a little bit off while blowing it out, and that's because the thicknesses are different. But it'll be fine once we set the bottom in.
Stop.
You can see that shimmer, the different kind of thicknesses. But I'll grab my blow hose and then have JW meet me on the other side, and we'll put the bottom in the piece.
Utilizing that thing was Aaron Will and Bree did it. Like a That's All Folks Steve Bugs Bunny thing, so when you know, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
So when he goes into the glory hole.
Yeah.
And then I did one of my folded airplanes, and that's kind of was half, you know.
Just focusing heat on the bottom.
And I also put a goblet on a piece of sheet glass that both things I made.
Yeah.
And then I let it slump. Everywhere else was just like it's cool, but nobody's ever utilized it really.
I think if you had one like above, you could use
Give it a deep
on
flash.
where you're heating in the hole.
Yeah.
One more little focus on the bottom, and then back at the bench. Jacks on the side, and JW with a paddle. And you can kind of see how the thickness is, but the bottom's looking fairly okay. A little bit of air pressure by me. JW was paddling, and it looks alright, but because the thicknesses are so strange, we'll do that move one more time just to ensure that everything looks and feels good. So same sort of thing, giving a little air pressure with a blow hose, jacks on the side, JW on the paddle. And we're just kind of forcing that into a cylinder. It's good enough, but you can still see where the thicker spots are on the sides. And just giving it a little bit of a kick. Torching the moil and the jack line, and now just waiting for JW to bring the punty. That looks fairly good. Grabbing my cane and just marking my bullseye on the bottom. Using the map gas now. And a quick flash before JW brings the punty. JW comes over, just touch it on, just a little bit. Once I like where it is, I can push a little bit more. Tweezers on either side of the neck, just a lift up and a snap of the polo pipe, and it pops right off. Then I'm reheating my tweezers by grabbing the moil with them. That way I won't shock it when I take my blade and stick it on the inside. So one blade on the inside, one on the outside, just a lift up and a push down. Now, to me, visually, it's a little awkward. You just got to look at the very bottom of this. You can't really look at the whole silhouette because of the way when you turn it, the thicknesses can kind of throw you off. So just pay attention to the bottom. It's just an optical illusion. The shape is on center. Now I'm just going to heat up the lip so I can tweeze it, trim it, and then put a clear lip wrap on it.
What's the time at?
33:24. When I was a kid, my dad worked for Kurt Lumber, and they sold pine back when that's my front business.
Yeah.
One of his big clients was actually the speedway, Indianapolis Speedway. So he pulled me out, we go to preparation day, some time trials, all these competing clients.
I grab my tweezers, just start pulling out a little bit. It pulls out a little funny, but that's fine, to be expected. And then I go in and just try to trim it as straight as possible.
And eventually started playing it out, so I'm telling everybody he was Jimmy O.
And back to the glory hole.
My dad eventually got a picture with Mary Rector. My dad,
I don't want to overdo it, mess up the thicknesses.
yeah, like 4 inches shorter than him.
Jeez.
So just coming in and opening up the lip just a little bit, making sure the top is straight and everything looks good, and I'm ready for the lip wrap. JW is gathering it up and coming over, holds it up, then drops it down. I touch it on the lip and roll across the lip once, and then I just wrap it on itself, so 2 complete times around, and cutting it by pulling through itself. For this heat, I want to melt it in, but I also don't want to get it too hot where I can thicken up everything. At the bench, by taking my jacks on the outside, and then the inside, and then outside again, I can see if there's any funny spot where I might need to trim it, or whatnot. But it all looks pretty good, so I just needed to have JW paddle. I didn't have to take off any excess material. Now using the Sophie, blowing out the top, you can see it kind of wants to blow out a little funny. Again, I position it a little further off the bench, he blows, then I pull it back. Then I just take my jacks on the sides and really try to force it into that cylinder shape. By keeping that back 3/4 cool, I can focus in on the top quarter to finish the cup. So jacks on the outside, then I'll open up that lip a little bit. JW comes across, just making it nice and straight. The lip kind of comes in a little bit, but that's why we Sophie again. Almost on most cylinders and cups and shapes, but especially this piece because of the weird thicknesses, it really makes a lot of sense to go on the jacks from the outside before you Sophie. So the jacks are on the outside, and then grabbing the Sophie with my jacks and giving it a puff.
Yeah, go ahead and grab
And then
her.
ensure that it's straight all the way down, taking my jacks. Now I just need to focus in on that top little quarter section of the cup. You could also see, if you rewind, just where the thicknesses are a little different, particularly where the termination points are of the canes on the side of the vessel. Jack's on the outside, JW's just paddling the bottom, and now he's paddling the lip at the same time. That way I can try to make it and keep it as straight as possible in both the top and bottom parallel. Just needs a little bit more opening. For a cup like this where the thicknesses are different, you don't want to just rip it open, because that's how you'll definitely have an uneven top due to those thicknesses.
But then when I'm at the bench, I can see what I'm doing. So it's
Yeah.
like I just hope I did it right.
Yeah.
So starting on the outside, and then jacks on the inside,
Good news is you're not smoking it.
and it's a pretty straight, smooth thing, but you can kind of see how that optical
Okay, one
blip
more.
happens as I turn it.
Overall.
Yeah, another sandwich. Sort of need to get that hump out, you know?
Yep.
See, you got a little oval there, but with jacks on the outside, use the centrifugal force to spin it,
Looks better, yeah.
and then go on the inside and make sure it's nice and round
It's just the
while
optics
JW
of
is
it,
giving
you
me
know.
a sandwich.
Off.
Now I'm at the point where I can start to put my little grip parts. So first the thumb. So I'm doing it in between where the pipe and the punty, or the termination points. These should be thinner spots in the glass. Just kind of going parallel to the top of the bottom. And then letting gravity take over, and then a little puff of air just to cool that spot. JW taking it for a quick flash. And now I need to do the opposite, or kind of the finger grooves for the index, middle, and ring. So now I'm perpendicular to the bottom as I torch. You don't want to stay in one spot. You also don't want to have the torch too hot. You can kind of burn or boil the glass. And once I kind of get an indent, then I'll just let gravity take over and do its thing. And there you see that, now flashing, give it a little blow, and flashing and torching the punty.
Like you need a little sink back.
It looks like we're pretty much done.
Don't hold it down, whatever you do.
I'm just torching the bottom to make sure it'll break off nicely, as well as make sure the bottom and the kick is how it's supposed to be. JW holds it up so that the bottom can't pull out any. If anything, it can sink back just a little bit. It looks like we're pretty much done. I'm just torching the bottom to make sure it'll break off nicely. Right through the glory hole. There's the cup and some friends. See little grip spots.
Okay, J-Dub.
Another torch with the map gas. And one more flash for good measure. Drop of water right on the connection point between where the punty and the bottom of the piece meets. A quick tap. And then a torch to take away any sharp marks the punty might have left.
Cool. Thank you, sir.
And there's the glass that we just made. Here again is kind of the process of how I go about the diagram for switching the axis, from twisting the cane to making that ball and putting in that neck. And then here are some works Lino did, all angel tears with switch axis technique, from left and calmo, and then 2 cane pieces. Lastly, here's a piece that I made in Tulsa about a year or so back that is also a switch axis. Thanks for watching Maker's Perspective. Cheers.